Welcome to episode 20 of the Equestrian Author Spotlight podcast. I'm Carly Kade, and today I'm speaking with Sasscer Hill. Author Sasscer Hill was involved in horse racing as an amateur jockey and then became a horse race breeder for most of her life. She sets her novels against a background of big money, gambling, and horse racing. Her mystery and suspense thrillers have won the Dr. Tony Ryan Best in Racing Literature Award and the Carrie McRae Award. Her books have also received multiple award nominations for Agatha, McCavie, and Claymore Awards. Her newest release is Travels of Quinn, a standalone mystery thriller based on the con artists known as Irish American travelers. Sasscer lives in Aiken, South Carolina, horse country, with her husband, a dog, and a cat. Now let's get into the interview. Welcome to the Equestrian Author Spotlight podcast, a podcast featuring interviews with equestrian authors who love all things horses and writing about them. In each episode, you'll hear inspirational stories from horsebook authors, including writing advice and marketing tips to help you write your very own horsebook. If you're an author, aspire to be an author, or simply love horsebooks, then you are in the right place. I'm your host, Carly Kade, and creative writing makes my spurs jingle. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Equestrian Author Spotlight podcast. I'm Carly Kade, and today I am so excited to have Sasscer Hill with me. Hi, Sasscer.
Hi, Carly. Sasscer Hill is very excited to be here, too. This is going to be fun.
It is absolutely going to be fun because it's two authors talking about the best thing on earth, horses, and writing about them, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I love them, and I love writing about them.
Excellent. So this is going to be a great conversation. And I think, that leads me to, we both love horses, right? So I'd love to hear how your love affair with horses began.
Well, when I was really little, like when I was 2 and 3 years old for my birthday, I always wanted pony ride.
Mm-hmm.
And then my father had a farm in Maryland with Belgian draft horses, and he would not let me have a pony. I mean, we had this big farm with stables, everything. He wouldn't let me have a pony. So by the time I was 6, 7, and 8, I was walking up to these huge Belgian draft horses and then climbing up in the stall, getting on their backs after I tied a little string or anything I could find to their halters. And then I'd drum my little heels in their sides and get them out of the barn, and off I'd go. And I was riding around on these horses by myself. It's just a little tiny thing. And the people that owned the horses, the tenant farmers, thought it was funny and cute, and they never said anything to my father.
So I imagine there was some binder's twine maybe involved in tying to the horse's halters so you could...
Exactly. Anything I could find, anything. And it usually would be string off of a hay bale or a straw bale.
Horse people can do anything with a piece of binder's twine.
Well, where there's a will, there will be a way. Right?
Especially for a horse crazy cowgirl or equestrian, for sure. We will do whatever it takes to get on the backs of our horses.
That's right. Indeed.
So I had so much fun galloping around your very cool website, doing some research to gather questions for our interview today. And something that, you've been involved with horses for, as long as you can remember. But one thing that was really interesting to me is that you've been involved in horse racing as an amateur jockey, and
right.
and you've been, in racehorse breeding for most of your life. Can you tell us a little bit about how you came into that? And I really would love to know what it feels like to ride a racehorse and be involved in the breeding side. So tell us a little bit about that part of your history with horses.
Well, it's really, it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. I cannot tell you. But when I was 16, my father passed away, and a man named Alfred H. Smith took me under his wing. He was a wealthy gentleman who lived not far from our farm, and he raised, bred, rode steeplechase horses. In fact, he had the Eclipse Award-winning steeplechase champion named Tuscaloosa 2 years in a row. So he was a big deal in that world, steeplechase world. And he took me under his wing and put me on a horse that had just come off the steeplechase track. He was a chestnut named Hilmar. And off I went fox hunting because my mother, my father just died. So my mother went up to him at a cocktail party and said, I've got this daughter and and she's kind of getting into trouble. And he said, well, bring her on down. I'll put her on a horse. And boy, he did. And there were a few times that I would pass the master with the the bit in the horse's teeth. But everybody put up with it because, I was 16 and they just thought that this was great, that I was getting into this world. And it saved my life. I was getting into some bad areas. I was starting to hang out with the wrong people and maybe not do the best things. And this just turned my life around. It was wonderful. So that's how I got started in the horse business, because I got involved with these steeplechase horses and his farm, and he had a stallion there, and I would watch his foals, and I learned so much from him. And he would take me to the races with his family, and it was just an amazing stroke of luck for a 16-year-old girl, let me tell you. I mean, it was an amazing stroke of luck. And because of that, I always loved that world. And when I got married, I had my own hunter, because I'd been fox hunting with the Marlboro Hunt Club and Mr. Smith for years. And by the time I got married, I had my own horse, and my husband and I moved into our farm. And I decided that my horse needed a companion horse. Mm-hmm. So what did I do? I went out and got a broodmare and foal. I went to the Fasig Tipton sales and bought a nice mare, got a great price, and had my first foal on the farm. And then after that, we just never stopped. And it was a lot of fun. I mean, it's just, have you ever had your hands on a newborn foal and felt them? I mean, the soft fuzz, and they quiver to your touch, and they're so sweet, and they'll put their little noses on you. It's incredible. I mean, there's just nothing like it. And I miss it now that I'm not in that world anymore, but I'm older, and it just kind of made sense to slow down. In fact, I had no choice but to slow down.
And we do have to start slowing down and taking care of us as we get a little older. But yes, you said so much there. Horses do save lives, and they do heal us, and they do teach incredible responsibility for young people that may be, heading in the wrong direction. And I'm so glad the universe opened up and pulled forth. Your mom did the right thing, getting you involved with horses, because they teach responsibility. They teach empathy. They teach you have to put them before yourself. So you're always looking out for the well-being of something else, which I think is a great way to steer young people out of trouble. And then it is. Yeah. So you had that wonderful experience of the horses healing you when you were dealing with, the death of your father and so many things. And then, obviously turned into a lifelong love, and you started breeding. And when you said there's nothing like touching a newborn foal, I have had that privilege. My childhood horse, we bred her, and she had a baby, and I was there when it happened. So it's such a beautiful, incredible moment. And then seeing them stand and nurse for the first time. And
that's the beautiful moment. That's the moment when they could stand and nurse, and I would see the throat swallowing, and colostrum and all those good vitamins and things that they had to have to stay alive were going down the throat. Then I'd always start crying, because you're so tense and you're so afraid. And then that's that moment of relief where the plug is pulled and you go, okay, we've got a good shot here of making it with this one, and because they don't all live, and it can be very, very hard. So then I guess we don't really need to talk about that too much.
Yeah, well, but that is part of life. There, sad things do happen, and particularly when you're breeding horses, there are complications, just like with anything in life. So that's also a lesson that horses teach us, right? So
yes,
that's a beautiful thing. And then when you were involved in breeding, were you breeding for steeplechase or fox hunting, or what were you breeding for?
Flat track. My horses all ran at Pimlico, Charlestown, Delaware Park. There was a track for a while in Virginia called, oh God, what was the name of that? Well, anyway, even one of my books, this book, took place at that racetrack in Virginia. And it was just, actually, I made more money down there because they had this amazing breeders program where if you had a Virginia bred, you got these big bonuses. when your horse ran in a race and won, you got a huge bonus on top of that. So it was interesting, all the things. I learned so much about horse racing and all the breeders' programs and the bonuses and why Maryland racing went bankrupt and why I had to get out. It was so interesting. And I was so angry at the legislators in Annapolis, Maryland, for ruining the horse industry, the racehorse industry in Maryland for a time. I actually appeared up in an editorial in the Washington Post with all out in the field holding all my horses because I was so angry, and I convinced one of the editors who was all for not having slot machines in the state of Maryland. I explained to him, I was on the phone with him for 45 minutes, and he finally got it, what the deal was that would make people who bred horses be able to survive in Maryland doing that if we had the right programs and we could get the money. So there's just horses, I was never into show horses, but the gals that are in show horses, you can imagine the things they learn about, that we all learn about greed and people stabbing each other in the back, and then the thrill of the win. It's all, no matter what area you're in, you learn a lot about people. You learn about how to negotiate. So they're just wonderful animals. If I had a daughter, she'd probably be on that horse right now.
And that is a cool bond to be able to share with, a family member. This is like, for me, the perfect segue into, your author career, because you said how much the horses taught you. And obviously you were very involved in the racehorse industry and breeding and raising horses and having them, learning the healing part, but then also the difficult, controversial part about being involved with, the equestrian community and what goes on to that. So let's talk, like, why did you decide to write your books? And what led you to become, what led you to your author life?
Well, I'll tell you, the first thing that happened was, as soon as I was old enough to read, I would go right to all the Black Stallion books in the library, and used to drive my mother crazy because she wanted me to read other things. When I was in the 5th grade, I was in class one day, and Mrs. Kimmerling, I remember that was her name, and she always had coffee breath. But you do remember
the
these.
Worst. Oh, yeah, totally.
Anyway, she told the class to write a little story, a little something on a piece of paper, and everybody in the class was like, ah. So I wrote just a fragment of a thing. It was kind of like a Black Stallion type story. There was an old man driving a trailer. There was a boy in the trailer next to him, and they were pulling a horse, and they were going to the races. And I don't remember what happened, but I made something bad happen while they were driving. And then that's kind of where the story stopped. And afterwards, I just was so surprised because all these little kids in the class, they raised their hands, and I said, yes. And they said, what happens next? And there is well, you're an author, there is nothing better to hear in your life than people want to know what happens next. So I thought, gosh, maybe I can do this. So I wrote a lot of, it was always my strong point throughout school, writing, creative writing. I took a lot, but I did what so many of us do. I got out of college, and I went to secretarial school, and I got a crappy job that I hated. And I did that forever until, and then I got married and got the horses on the farm. So I had 2 lives going on. And then I finally wrote my first book, which is still in a drawer where it belongs. It was a romantic horse thriller called Heart of a Winner. And then I got very depressed, and I thought, well, I can't write, because the book was rejected by everybody. And I finally got with the program and went to a school in Bethesda called the Writers School, and took courses in writing a mystery novel. And I wrote my first book, and it was nominated for an Agatha and a McCavity. So that was just great.
And that is an amazing story, an amazing journey. And I, it's so interesting, particularly, I notice with a lot of us as I'm interviewing other horse book authors and we're talking, it's like those two things have always been constants in our life: the desire to write creatively and, or enjoying writing, and then horses. And it's like, I look back at my life and those are the two things that have always been consistent for me. And it sounds like you're having that same
Yeah,
experience.
it's like the cement that keeps your life together in a way. I mean, it's very strong.
Mm-hmm.
And then to be able to write about what I had experienced as a racehorse owner, I learned so much about the tricks and the good things and the bad things. And so I could write a good mystery that everybody would say it's so authentic.
Yeah.
And that's probably why I've done fairly well. Not great, but fairly well.
And that's so exciting. And I'm so happy for your success. And, I'm so happy to be talking to you for the first time, because we've known each other, just from the writing community and the horse community and the circles online. But this is the first time we're talking in person. So I'm so excited to be able to do that with you, which leads me to my next question, which is, how many books have you written? Tell us about your books. You write horse racing murder mysteries. Like, let's hear about your series. Let's talk about your books. I'm really interested to know even more.
Well, the first book I wrote that was nominated for Agatha McCavity Best First Book was Full Mortality. So I have a 4-book, that series stars or features Nikki Luttrell, who's a young female jockey. And I have 4 of those, and I'm writing my 5th right now, working on my 5th one. Then I got a new agent, and we brainstormed, and we came up with another, because the publishers are not going to take a series that you have. That series, the Nikki Luttrell series, started out with a small publisher and a small press. And I don't know if you know of, there's a Sisters in Crime gal named Lois Watson. And she told me the other day, and it just hit me that she was so right, because the writing world is so hard now. She said, most of the gals I know who are writing for small presses are little more than indentured servants. And it just hit me so hard, because it's true. It's so hard to really make money, and they will tie you up into 10-year contracts. You get 10%, they get the rest. So that's why I got the rights back from the small press and self-published those books. Then I got a new agent and ended up getting a 2-book deal with St. Martin's Press. At that point, I thought, well, here I am. I have arrived. I am with one of the big 5. Well, it didn't work out that well. The books didn't sell that well, and they didn't give me a contract for a 3rd book. So what was going to be the 3rd book, I turned back into a Nikki Luttrell novel, and that's the one I'm working on now. And then in the meantime, I wrote a non-horse racing book. Has horses in it, though. It's about a young girl who's born into the community of Irish American travelers. They're the con artists and scam artists that live. The largest clan is right here where I live in South Carolina. And so I thought, well, they're basically gypsies. So what could be better than a gypsy vanner? Those horses are so cool. I just love them.
They are
so
beautiful.
They're in the book. Yeah, they are beautiful. And she learns all about what it's like, because she doesn't know anything about horses, to have to scrub out those feathers around their ankles and those, she calls them bangs. She goes, why do you have their bangs so long? And the guy gets really mad. That is not a bang, that is a forelock. So it was kind of fun, because she's this gal that comes from that insular, closed private community of the Irish American travelers, and they are taken out of school really young. They're locked into marriage contracts at very young ages. You'll see little 5-year-old girls with wedding rings. I mean, it's just bizarre, because they have the contract, see, and then they have to marry, and they stay inside of the clan. So I thought that is a very interesting background. And for her, like for me, the gypsy vanners give her a new world and a place where she thinks, maybe I can have a better life. And so it's been fun to write the story. That one's finished, and it'll be out in February.
That is so exciting. And for those of you listening to the podcast and watching us on YouTube, I will make sure to link to all of Sasscer's books in the show notes, so you can find these wonderful books and get to her resources. So this is really interesting. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions a little bit later about your preference between traditional and self-publishing. And I'd really like to, or maybe why don't we just do that right now, because you mentioned that, I wanted to ask you which do you prefer, but you just mentioned that you have been with a traditional publisher.
Yeah,
and
let me just show, these are the two books that came out with St. Martin's Press, Flamingo Road and The Dark Side of Town. And it was wonderful because they did everything. And now that I'm self-publishing this new book, I'm just, going berserk trying to keep up with all the new stuff and do everything right. And I would, if you can be the kind of writer that gets with a big press and that you actually make money and they push you and they advertise you, that's the best way to go. But it's very hard, very hard.
And I wanted to talk about that too, because you mentioned contracts, right? So I'm really big on retaining intellectual property, which you can more easily do being an independent author. And I've heard some stories from people that have been with traditional publishers that, they only give you a little bit of the royalties from the book, and then they take the rest. And then they also retain rights to release your books overseas and, do audio versions or even movie rights sometimes. And you mentioned getting back your rights from a small press and then going the independent route. Was that difficult for you to do that? And did you have to recover your books? Like what were the
Well, I was very, very lucky. I was with the head of that little press is a decent person. And when I wrote this book, The Seahorse Trade, he forgot to even have me sign a contract. So, and then with his press, you were able to get your book back, have the rights back, revert back in 4 years. So some of my books were almost 4 years. This one I had just come out and was brand new, but he didn't have a contract. So he just said, just take them, because he felt so bad. And he knew that I should have been making more money. And anyway, so I got the books back, and that was easy. It was just, I just redid the covers. Because I didn't like his covers.
and that's something else to mention about when you do sign with a traditional publisher. It's like, first of all, get legal representation, read your contracts, know what you're getting yourself into. But then also when you turn over your manuscript, you don't really have a say on how your covers end up looking. And it sounds like that's exactly what you experienced. Is that right? You didn't like the covers? It
is. And if you look at this picture of Flamingo Road, there's no horse on the cover. You can't tell what it is. And I have a following, and they're all looking for something that has something to do with horse racing. And that is a horse racing mystery, but who would know?
Right.
And I'll tell you, if I can, exactly what happened is that the editor, who I just love, my editor, Hannah Broughton at St. Martin's Press, she was wonderful. She fought tooth and nail to get me that 2-book deal because the people in marketing and sales said, horse racing book, that's not going to sell very well. Well, you want to talk about the self-fulfilling prophecy? I mean, they didn't push the book. She got no support. Nothing was done. So, I don't have the money to do what needed to be done. So the books sold, I think, about maybe 2,500 copies each, which is terrible. But here's the interesting thing. The Dark Side of Town got a starred booklist review. It was an editor's pick with a Toronto Star. It got great trade reviews, and Flamingo Road also got great trade reviews and won that huge prize. So, but it didn't make any difference because the publisher wasn't pushing the book.
That is really interesting, because I did want to ask you about this. Your novel, Flamingo Road, won the $10,000 Dr. Tony Ryan Best in Racing Literature Award. Is that correct? In 2018,
yes.
Which is amazing. And you're saying, you were having a difficult time with the publisher of this book. So, can you tell us a little bit about the award? So did they submit for you, or did you submit the book?
They did have to submit. I said, would you, do that? And they did. And then they narrow it down to like 6 people, and then they narrow it down to 3 people. And when I found out I was one of 3, I thought, oh my God, and then of course, Felix Francis, Dick Francis's son, was there with his book Pulse. And I thought, well, he's going to win. I mean, he's a Francis, and it's like a franchise. Plus they have a big publisher, he's got, oh God, one of the big ones, I can't think of it right now, behind him, and they spend money on him, and he's made money for them. And I just thought I didn't have a chance in, hell of winning a prize.
And then how did you feel when you did? Like, what doors did that open for you? Because that's amazing.
Well, it was a lot of fun because I wasn't going to go because I couldn't afford to go. But then I found out that the three people that were the last three contestants, they sent you $1,000 so that you could go and stay in a hotel. That's horse people and the big world of Kentucky racing. There's lots of money. So they paid my way, and I thought, well, this is great. I get to go and I can meet Felix Francis and I can see my friends, because I have a lot of friends in Kentucky from the old days,
Mm-hmm.
So I did, and that was great. And they took us, TVG, the horse racing television network in the United States of America. There's a really nice gal. Her name is Caitlin, and she interviewed us on live TV. Felix Francis, myself, and the other gal, whose last name I think is Henshaw. And it was cold. It was springtime, but it was 40 degrees and the wind was blowing, and I was like all bundled up. And I have that video on my Facebook page, my author page. You can watch that video. It's fun.
I watched it, and I will link to it in the show notes so others can watch it as well. Yeah.
And that was the day of. And then then they took us to lunch in the Jockey Club, and where they had prime rib and lobsters, and I thought, boy, I'm really living it up. I haven't had a good steak in like 2 years. It was really fun. And I sat there talking to Felix Francis, and he has a spiel that he does, because I had met him, 3 years earlier at a Malice Domestic meeting. He had come, and he told the exact same things. He had the same stuff to say about himself at lunch, and I thought, oh my God, he's going to do this again tonight at the awards ceremony. But and I was nervous, and I love bourbon, and there's no place in the world to get good bourbon like Kentucky. So I had a couple of drinks with lunch, and then I went back to my hotel and changed into something much more dressy and slightly more formal for the party. And Caitlin Bredar was there, and from TVG, and some other whoopie-doo people, and all of these wealthy Irish derivative people from that were horsemen. I never heard so many Irish accents in my life, because Ryan, I don't know if you've ever heard in Europe of Ryanair. It's a very big airline that everybody in Europe knows, and they own that. So there's plenty of money there. And he had just come over from one of his two homes in Ireland for this award to his home in Kentucky. And he was an interesting guy, Shane Ryan. But anyway, I went to the party, and I had a couple of more drinks and then when they got up on the stage, and Caitlin did, and she told a little bit about each book that was up for the award. And then Shane got up there, and he was going to do the announcement. So I'm still chugging down the bourbon. And I'm saying to myself, and it was just like the Academy Awards, he has an envelope. He doesn't know who the winner is. He opens the envelope. He pulls out the card. He looks at it. And I'm like this, going, Pulse, Pulse, Pulse. That was the name of Felix Francis's book. And I was preparing myself for the disappointment. Mm-hmm. He will say Pulse. He will. Mm-hmm. Because I'm not going to win. And he said, Flamingo Road. And see, I'm crying right now just remembering that moment. It was incredible. Flamingo Road, and I burst into tears, and my girlfriend from Kentucky came up and wrapped me in her arms and hugged me. And then I had to clamber back up these steps onto the stage, and I'm thinking, I'm so drunk. How am I going to get up there? I wasn't really drunk, but I was high in a nice way. Yeah. And it was funny. All I said was, I was sure I wasn't going to win. And now I realize I have won. I'm going to cry. So I'm going to get down and drink some more bourbon. And I did. And the whole audience went wild. They all cheered. They just thought that was great.
Thank you for sharing that story with us. Like, what an amazing moment for you as an author.
It's incredible. It was one of the best things I've ever had happen to me.
Wow, and it sounds like they treated you really well and they took good care
Oh,
of you and they
they're
certainly
wonderful.
provided the bourbon.
Yes, they sure did.
It
In
is.
fact, at one point, Shane wanted to say something about me, and he goes, "Where is she? Where's Bourbon?"
That is so funny. So I have to ask, what did you do with that $10,000 prize money? Did you
uh,
buy a horse or did you invest
no,
it back in your business? What did you?
no. The reason I couldn't go to Kentucky without somebody paying for it is I was dug under credit card, just drowning under credit card debt. So I put $9,600 towards credit card debt, and then for $400, I bought the most beautiful pocketbook you've ever seen in your life.
Oh,
It was a black and white cowhide handmade bag with leather harness shoulder straps, and then the inside of the purse was lined with red leather. It's just the coolest thing, and it has little feathers and conchos on it. It's very Western, so that was my big. That's what the fun thing I spent the money on. The rest all went to credit card debt.
well, and that's a responsible thing to do, right? Pay down your
Yeah.
credit card debt. But I do love that you did something special for yourself and you honored yourself and your hard work and your creative work with something special for yourself. And that purse sounds like something this cowgirl would like a whole
Oh,
lot.
you would. Oh, they're so cool. And they're handmade right here in Aiken. And the gal that does it has a little warehouse, and you can go. I got to pick out my own hides, and I got to pick out the red leather that I wanted, and the
Oh,
shoulder strap I wanted. So it was
oh,
really fun.
that sounds fabulous. And you still have that purse, right? You
Oh,
rock
God,
that out.
yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
good, good.
I could run out of the room and come back and show it to you, but that would probably don't want to do that because the dog would come in.
Oh, yeah, keep it away from the dogs. So I wanted to ask you too. You mentioned Dick Francis's son, and I wanted to talk with you a little bit about that because your writing has been compared with the late Dick Francis.
Yes.
All of his novels deal with crime in the horse racing world, and he wrote more than 40 international bestsellers. Like, what a compliment to be compared with him.
I thought so.
How does that make you feel when
Good.
that started happening?
It was great. It made me feel really nice, especially when an author like Margaret Maron, if you know who she is, she's won, everything. She's won Agatha's, Anthony's, Edgar's, and she said, this to say that she is like Dick Francis is not hyperbole. Never can get those words out. Hyperbole.
I do it all the time.
Yeah, and, I mean, it was just great to have somebody like that say, this is Dick Francis. And then the fellow who wrote for years for the Daily Racing Form and the Blood Horse, Steve Haskin, he wrote, Dick Francis Lives. I mean, it was just so nice. It was so nice.
Well, and what a testament to your writing, right? I mean, obviously, you're doing a wonderful job with your work. I mean, you've won this award. You're being compared to a best-selling thoroughbred racing writer who has since passed, and so you're kind of like bringing, continuing the legacy for people who love to read mysteries in this vein. And so, which leads me to another question, which is like, you write about real life situations in the horse industry, and you cover topics. You cover topics like sensitive topics like drugging and in the business. And do you ever get any pushback from the industry that you write about these sort of real life topics? And how do you handle that or work around that with your writing so you don't upset the community?
I've never had any problem at all. First of all, they really like it because I'm about the only person that's writing horse racing mysteries that really know about American horse racing and get it right and just know things. But mostly it's because my love for thoroughbred racing shines through just about every page. And I'm always about, like, in full mortality, a horse was getting ready to be sent to the slaughterhouse, and Nikki Luttrell, rents a truck and a trailer and goes off into the mountains and just barely gets this horse. And she has to use some sneaky stuff to make sure she gets the bid, and then she brings it back. Things like that. And the bad guys who do the bad things, they're pictured as bad guys, and then they always get what's coming to them. So, and the good people in my books win. And that's the only way I can write. I don't like real literature where, it all has these dreary endings and No thanks. I like genre. I like to write mysteries, and readers expect to have their heroine or hero do well by the end of the book. They want that, and that's what I write.
That's wonderful. And yes, I do like the happy endings and, that satisfaction. I'm with you on that one for sure. As a reader and a writer, that's how I like to wrap things up as well. And so, you obviously write what you know. You're very involved in the business. Your thoroughbreds, racing. Do you have to do any additional research or anything when you're going to write your books, or do you write what you know?
I write what I know, but I always use law enforcement. I always have law enforcement contacts all over the country at this point to make sure I'm getting it right when, we're talking about crime and courthouse. Like in the book I just wrote now that has the gypsy vanners in it, I had 7 law enforcement people that I interviewed. One was the head of public safety, which just means the head of the Aiken Police Department. And I was taken on a tour of the detention center because in my book, my heroine ends up in the detention center. She's sent to jail. And I wanted to know what that was like. So he took me on this long tour and showed me all these different areas and places and, what the prisoners' uniforms were and what they meant, everything. It was just great. And then I had a meeting with a Judge Early. He's a district area judge for Aiken County and Bramwell County and some other counties in this area. And I spoke with him, and he wanted to know what the book was about. When I told him, he said, "How did you ever come up with all that stuff?" And I said, "Well, I'm a writer." So, but he was a big help, And then I have a friend who's just wonderful, he worked with the DEA. He was an undercover cop. He used to be a jockey. That was the first thing he ever did.
Oh, wow.
And then he was a district attorney and a prosecutor. And now he's just in private law practice. But could there be anybody more perfect for me to pick their brain?
I was going to say, what a great resource to be able to sit and talk with this person.
Great. He's great. And then there were some people in the courthouse that were very helpful. The clerk of the court showed me where they put the prisoners during trial because I wanted to know where my heroine, Quinn O'Neill, what's it like to be waiting there knowing you're going to be going into the courtroom in any second with your life on the line, and where do they put them? And she showed me these little rooms that they put them in that have like these little small squares of thick glass. And I said, "Do they ever yell?" And she goes, "Oh yeah, we hear some things." It's just so it's fascinating to do the research, and you meet so many interesting people.
That's right. Absolutely. And it sounds like you're being responsible about when you're talking about law enforcement and crime and how that works and getting the authentic experience. So you can write from a place of knowing what that was like, right?
Yeah.
If you haven't been in the situation, at least talk to people that can give you guidance on what the situation might occur like or be like or feel like. That's really smart.
It is nice. And I remember there was a Breen, John Breen, I think his name was. He interviewed, or rather reviewed, Full Mortality, and he was with Mr. Scene magazine, or I think it was Mr. Scene magazine. Anyway, I remember the quote he said was it was this and that and that, and reeks authority, which was interesting. That he meant it was very clear that I knew what I was talking about.
That is awesome, and way to go. And your reviews are solid. I've read many of them that are on your website, and people are really supportive of your writing. You mentioned earlier that when you were with a traditional publisher for Flamingo Road, the cover that they created didn't have a horse on it, which I know I will read anything with a horse on it, or I'm at least attracted to it.
Pick it up and look at it, right?
Absolutely. And so, which leads me to wanting to talk about, your current book covers and the ones that you've redesigned for yourself. Tell us how you come up with the ideas for your book covers. Because when I look at your book, I know this is a book about horse racing, and that's why that's a very important thing to do with book cover design. So can you talk to us a little bit about covers?
These Nikki Luttrell books? You see the girl galloping on the horse?
Mm-hmm.
She could be Nikki Luttrell. When I saw that picture, I thought, "Oh my God, that's my girl, and that's the horse." So then I found out that it was an American Pharaoh.
Oh.
And I thought, oh my God, I've got to get a hold of this picture. That was him as a 2-year-old in training before anybody ever even heard of him. And I found the photographer in Florida, and we had a little bit of a problem with the language, but he had a woman there that would get on the phone and so that I could understand, because he was Spanish or Mexican. And anyway, I bought the picture, the rights to the picture, at least not so that I could use them.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was like $150, and I've just used it on the cover of every book because it's such a, that's just Nikki on that horse there. I'm looking down at her picture. That's Nikki.
And it's perfect. And so you did the right thing. You bought the rights to the picture to use on your work. Yes, you have to be responsible about that. You can't just pull something off the internet and use it. People need to be paid for their work. But people recognize that picture for your work. So when you do another book, you may use the same picture, but you change the color of the background and obviously the title.
That picture is going on the Nikki Luttrell I'm writing right now, but I will change the background color.
And that's fantastic branding, because when people see that, they know it's one of your books, and that's a really interesting way to do things, I think.
Yeah. Now, I did not put gypsy banners on the cover of the new book. I put, but I like the cover. I'll send you a picture of it. I don't have one like here on the desk to hold up, but I think I like it, and it's. The cover makes it very clear that there's a young woman with blonde hair. She's walking away down a road of very dark, heavy live oaks that branch over, and twist. And just the back of her walking away. And the title is Travels of Quinn, Quinn O'Neill. So I hope that will appeal to people. But then at the top, I put the Sasscer Hill in the white letters, like every single one of my books that I've done. So see that there.
Mm-hmm. And
hoping that would make it more recognizable.
Yeah.
You never know. You just do the best you can, right?
That is absolutely correct. And I think that you're doing a great job, and everything's looking so wonderful. And I wanted to shift, a little into like your experience with writing and marketing, since we're kind of, talking about book covers. Is there anything that you wish you had known when you were just beginning your author career? Is there something that you wish you could go back and tell yourself?
Yes, I wish that I had realized that there was that Sisters in Crime was not some elite group that would snub me. I never tried to join because I thought, well, I'm nobody. And those kinds of groups are the most wonderful thing. They're so supportive. It's incredible, those women. They're wonderful. And Mystery Writers of America is good, but I don't belong to them because their dues are too expensive right now. I like Mystery Writers. And then if you can get yourself a critique group, and you just have to put yourself out there and go to the conferences, meet people. I was just writing alone at home, writing my book, Heart of a Winner, that was actually good enough to get an agent. But I mean, I now will look back at it and I just go, oh my God, there's so many beginning first writer mistakes throughout that it's, even though there's some good stuff in it. Mm-hmm. So we just leave that in the drawer.
And but that that's part of the journey, right? Too. Your writing gets better as you move along, and if you have this calling, you have to follow it. But then I love what you just said. You have to find your people, and and when you find your people, the warmth and the community and the support and the recommendations and all of that is so important. It's like, because we're not each other's competition. We lift each other up when we all stand together, because particularly in our little community of people who write horse books, like, the equestrian community, everybody is pretty awesome, and we all love horses, and I want to create this space where we can all get together and help each other and lift each other up. And I'm hoping this podcast will be a part of helping that happen even more.
Well, I do too. I mean, there's nothing to me more important. And I mean, when you've been in it for a long time, I love to help other people. I love to help. I mean, I do the Sisters in Crime every year. They have a fantasy agent, and they ask some of us published authors to be a, quote, fantasy agent, and gals send in their first 50 pages, and then we critique them, and we point out the things that aren't working, and of course always point out the things that are good and that are working. And they don't know who you are. I don't know who they are. There's just a woman who is, the facilitator. But she wrote me this year and she said, I just want you to know that this, gal wrote back and said that you were just so wonderful and it was so helpful. And that's the kind of thing, it takes a while to read 50 pages, but so what? These people are striving. They want to win, that feeling, they want to win.
And we have to be careful with each other in our creative journeys too, right? And it sounds like you were just really wonderful with this woman. And, because when you're just getting going, particularly on that first book, you're like, what am I doing? Should I be doing this? Am I a writer? But then you kind of develop confidence as you go, but you also need to be able to listen to that feedback and ask for the feedback, right? So you can deliver the very best product.
You have to learn to accept criticism. And I got to the point where I thought, well, if one person in my critique group hates something that I've in this particular chapter, but everybody else thinks it's fine, then I don't pay any attention to what she said. But if two people have a problem with it, I'll look it over and maybe change it a little. And if 3 people have a problem, then I know we've got a problem. So.
Yeah, and that's true. You sort of have to pick and choose what you also accept and what you're gonna put over here on the shelf and just be like, that's okay, I'm gonna go this way.
And I tell everybody in my critique group that, because sometimes I'll send them something they're not gonna like and I'll say, this is just a suggestion, only an opinion. It is not right, it is not wrong, it's just how I might change it if it were mine, but it's not mine, it's yours. And anything that's useful or helpful to you, please use, and the rest of it, just ignore it.
You've shared so much awesome information with us, and you've talked a lot about your journey as an author. What advice would you give to an aspiring author that hasn't quite gotten started or gotten that first draft done on their first book? What would you offer them?
Well, the best advice I ever had was from Noreen Wald, who taught at the Writers' Center in Bethesda, which I mentioned earlier. And she would say, keep going, keep going, keep going. She would say, oh, well, you could change this and that and that and that. But in the end, she would say, and keep going. Don't stop. Because I stopped for 5 years, Carly, when I got all those rejections on Heart of Winter. I thought, wah, poor me. Oh, this isn't working. Oh, they don't like me. Oh, God, what a waste of time. What a big baby response. You have to say, screw them. They don't know anything. I'm going to keep on doing what I think I should do. But it took me 5 years to get to that point. And, I probably would be established now with a regular press, a good press, had I not lost those 5 years. But I did. So that's why I say, keep going.
That is excellent advice because, I think what you just said, we can be our own worst enemies when it comes to our writing. I had a similar situation where I, started and stopped and started and stopped and said, what am I doing? And kept shelving my book. And then, I finally got the courage, and sometimes you just have to do it and put it out there and learn your lessons and keep going forward and keep writing. Because if it's calling you forward, you have to follow that, right? Because that's what you're here for, right?
Exactly. And, it just made me think of like when you're riding and there's a big fence in front of you, you have to go over a big jump, you're out in the field and you're like, oh, so that looks awfully, you just keep going. And if you have a good horse, you're up and over and down, and then you're like grinning because you feel so great. And I, as I said before, I do miss that. I miss riding those horses because I would think nothing with this horse would go over a 5 foot straight up and down post and rail fence. I mean, it was awesome. He was amazing. So I'm just lucky I had that. Yes, I can't do it anymore, but hey, I got to do it.
Mm-hmm. And you're still writing about that experience, so you kind of get to live it again, through your creative words, right? Like, so it's still there, very much there for you. What for you has been the hardest part about being an author in your writing career? And then on the other side of that, what has been the very best thing for you about being an author of your books?
Well, the hardest part for me is what I think is the hardest part for anybody, the rejection. Mm-hmm. The thing that made me stop for 5 years, that obviously was a real punch in the face. and not doing well with St. Martin's, because once I got a 2-book deal with St. Martin's, I was sure that I had arrived and that my career would take off and everything would be wonderful. Well, it didn't. And knowing that, and I remember my agent called me that first summer and she said, well, I talked to Hannah, who was my editor at St. Martin's, and the news isn't good. They've changed their whole way of doing things. They just want to do big books from now on. And I'm thinking, oh yeah, I'm going to write 50 Shades of Grey or The Girl on the Train. That's not me. And, you know, and then when the books weren't selling well, that was disappointing because they're great books. And it's really hard. That was one of the hardest experiences I've had. And then I did just part ways with my agent. And she was sickened by the whole St. Martin's thing herself. And to be honest with you, I think that she just didn't want to represent me anymore. So that was hard. That was hard. And then having to switch to go back to self-publishing. And that's why I mentioned before the gal Lois Watts and then in the Indentured Servants. If I'm not going to have the big press, then I think you should self-publish. I really do. I think it's the way to go.
Well, it gives you a whole lot more power, right? You know, it's like you don't have to, you can more easily keep going forward, right? Because there aren't the roadblocks, there aren't the constrictions from legal contracts, there aren't the have-tos so much, and you're on your own timeline, right? So you can write how you want, you can make things look how you want, and then, you know, get yourself organized for the next big step. You know, and I think there is a lot of momentum around independent publishing right now. I think the quality is there. I think there's communities of authors supporting each other to make the work even better. I like to equate it to the indie musicians or indie film. You know, how many indie musicians in indie film end up going out there and just blowing people's socks off. So that's the community I think we're in right now, and that's what we're up to. And you're clearly doing that. I mean, and good on you.
Well, I'm trying.
Yeah,
that's all we can do is just keep on going.
Yeah, and you know, anything that is important to you and a creative endeavor is difficult, right? So there's always hardships, but there's also really beautiful, bright moments. So what's been the best part of all of this for you?
I think that one of the things that was the best part and one of the best gifts a writer can get, I had a gal send me a message on Facebook, and she said, I was going through a really hard time, and she said, your book, Full Mortality, got me through it. I read your book, and it just gave me another world to go to, and it got me through it. And there's nothing better than that. Money, you can't buy that kind of feeling with money. So, and I've gotten a lot of people, you know, when people say, oh, I read your book and I loved it, and they'll even quote something from the book. I mean, that's a gift. That makes you feel like wonderful. So that's the best part of being a writer, I think.
Absolutely. Well, we do it for the readers, right? You know, we provide escape and a break from reality where people can, you know, use their imaginations and go to this other place, this world that we've created. Because once we've finished writing it, it's really not ours anymore. It's for the readers, right?
That's right. That's right. It is.
Yeah. I have so enjoyed speaking with you and having you on the show today. And you are so lovely. And I think we will do a follow-up interview in the future where we can talk more about what you're up to in your writing journey. But for today, will you share, Sasscer, where people can find you in your books?
Oh, well, sasserhill.com is the best place to go to. And I have an author Facebook page. I have a few things, spend a little time on Instagram, not that much. Twitter, not too much. For me, Facebook has been the best way to sell books. And I think everybody has a different social media area or platform that works for them, that they do well with, that they understand. I understand Facebook. I never have any problem with it. I guess because I first got on it, you know, about 12 years ago, so I know it really well, and even the changes they've made. I do not advertise on Facebook, though. I think that's a bad, people say doing ads on Amazon is a better return for your buck, but I don't know if that's true. I mean, that's a whole nother big, huge conversation, how to sell your books and what's the best bang for your buck. It's a hard thing.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too. As authors, we try a whole lot of different things. And for me, what I think, I mean, you could spend money to advertise, but for me, I think what works best is like knowing your readers, getting out in the community and going to events, networking, and then building, you say you focus a lot on Facebook, like building a community around yourself in your books as an author so people know who you are. And because I think the best way to sell books is for one reader to read it and be like, oh my gosh, I just read this awesome book, go check it out. So it's like the more people you meet and the more people read your books, the more they recommend them. Because I know that that's how I am. When someone that is my trusted friend recommends a book to me, I'm more inclined, to go purchase that book. Also, reviews, getting reviews on your books on the platforms that you're selling them, like your amazing reviews that you've been getting for your books, really, I think helps people read the back and know whether or not it's something for them. So reviews, from readers matter, but that's all, kind of outside of our control, really. It's like all we can be is who we are and make sure people know our books exist. But, we can often throw a lot of money away trying different things.
I did.
Yeah.
I spent a ridiculous amount of money advertising on Facebook, and it didn't pay off. It wasn't worth it.
Yeah. And I'm with you. I've spent money advertising on Facebook and I didn't see the return on my investment. I know there's a lot of courses out there that teach you like different ways to like do it. And I just found meeting people, talking to people, going to events, supporting things in my local community where my demographic is likely to be, has been the best way to get the word out about my books rather than throwing money away, trying to hit the right demographic of people that don't even know me through advertising on Facebook. Right.
I know. And it's not just throwing money away. It's also, just running yourself ragged mentally trying to keep up with how to do it and then which one is the best one and which video should I watch today. And by the time you've spent all that time trying to learn how to do the latest, greatest thing, all you want to do is, get in bed and put the covers over your head. I mean, it's just awful.
Right. Well, and think about all the time you're spending trying to figure that stuff out when we should be just writing books. So like the real goal should be write the books, get more material out for your readers that do love you and, do love your books, that will recommend your books to others. Because I think about that all the time and you're so right. It's like, it's exhausting to try and stay on top of everything because there's something new all the time and technology is changing so fast. So I'm really looking at, in the next year, focusing on writing and what I'm up to rather than like getting out here, going all over, doing all this stuff, just really getting really focused on, bringing the best quality writing and books to the people that are already, reading and loving my books. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. And there is absolutely, as you were saying earlier, there is no better advertising than word of mouth. Mm-hmm. And that's something you can't pay people to like your book. I mean, if they like it, they'll tell people. And that really helps. And especially if you do get a community, as you were saying, and you are out there and people see you and you go to events. I mean, that just showing up, whoever the famous person was that said, 90% of it is showing up, just so people can see you and talk to you, and you can talk to them.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree with that. And I wanted to thank you for showing up today and being on this show.
You're so welcome, Carly. So welcome.
I've so enjoyed our time together. And, I think this is just the beginning. And I look forward to continuing our relationship and learning even more about you. And I wish you tons and tons and tons of more success in your endeavors. And I'm so honored to have you. And I've been loving following your journey. And I can't wait to see where you go next.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, both of us, right? Yeah. So thank you for being on the show today, Sasscer. I've really enjoyed you.
Bye, Carly. Bye-bye. It was fun. I'd love to do it again.
Thanks for joining us this week on the Equestrian Author Spotlight podcast. I hope you enjoy these Q&A sessions with wonderful equine authors who love all things horses and riding, just like me. Visit my website, carlycadecreative.com, where you can read the show notes, and make sure you never miss a show by clicking the subscribe button now. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you so much for your support. Want a free guide to secrets of horsebook authors? Gallop over to carlykadecreative.com/wisdom to have author advice delivered instantly to your inbox. If you are an author who writes about horses and would like to be spotlighted, please let me know. Visit my contact page at carlykadecreative.com to fill out a request. I'd be happy to have you on the show too. Thank you for tuning in to the Equestrian Author Spotlight podcast. See you next time. I'm your host, Carly Kade. Creative writing makes my spurs jingle.